It's pretty wild how during that live broadcast, economist Richard Wolff really broke down like Trump's collapse on multiple fronts.
Yep. I'm curious, what are the main dimensions that Wolf was targeting in his analysis?
Well, he wasn't just focusing on one thing. It was a three-pronged approach: legal troubles, economic missteps, and even the crumbling of Trump's political alliances.
Mm-hmm. Right, and it seems like Wolf made it clear that Trump's lawsuits, those tariff policies he pushed, and his personal relationships are actually funneling into a larger unraveling of his image.
Exactly. And it's like when you have a structure built on a shaky foundation, one fault causes a chain reaction across the board.
Yeah, I get that. So, when Wolf was exposing all of this, did he also highlight any potential long term consequences for Trump?
Oh, definitely. He argued that there's a growing trust deficit, not just among political opponents, but even some of his longtime supporters were, beginning to show signs of backpedaling.
Absolutely. And that makes me wonder how much of this collapse is really about legal missteps versus, say, economic policy failures?
Well, it's an intertwined mess, really. The lawsuits are kind of the tip of an iceberg that also includes tariff decisions that have sort of backfired economically. It's like he tried to build walls around his policies, but ended up building barriers that even his own base couldn't get past.
Right, I see what you mean. But isn't it a bit harsh to pin it all on tariffs and relationships? I mean, legal troubles are common for big businesses and politicians, right?
True, true. I mean, lawsuits are part of the political game. However, Wolf's assertion was that in Trump's case, these legal battles amplified pre existing economic issues and fractious relationships. It's not just about having lawsuits, it's about how those lawsuits, tariff policies, and personal decisions taken together undermine credibility.
Mm-hmm, that makes sense. So, using that analogy, it's like, if you had a house already with a few cracks and then an earthquake hits, the damage escalates.
Yes, exactly. And in this case, the earthquake was essentially the public exposure of these problematic policies and associations. You could say the live broadcast served as a kind of seismic event, exposing hidden vulnerabilities.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, what intrigued me was the reaction Trump literally losing it on live TV. That's not just a political statement, it really highlights the personal side of this collapse, doesn't it?
Definitely. It's one thing when you see policy debates, but when you see a figure of such magnitude visibly unraveling under scrutiny in real time, it adds a layer of raw emotion to the whole scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And think about it, his meltdown isn't just about his policies, but also about a larger narrative where his own narrative is under threat. He's seen as a symbol of a particular kind of robust image, which now appears to be, well, disintegrating in front of everyone.
Right. And that begs the question how much of this reaction is genuine outrage and how much is a calculated public display?
That's a great point. I think Wolf's analysis hints at a bit of both. On one hand, there's real anger and frustration over policy misfires like those tariffs, which have both economic and symbolic impacts. On the other hand, in the realm of politics, every reaction is scrutinized, so this public display might have been both spontaneous and, in a way, a strategic move to um, reinforce the persona he's built.
Yeah, I totally follow that. Speaking of strategies, did Wolf discuss any potential remedies or recovery strategies for Trump's image? Or was it more of a expose and react session?
It was mainly an expose, but he did touch on the idea that Trump could possibly try to reframe the narrative. Yet, the challenge is immense, given that his legal and economic issues are now intertwined with a collapsing trust. It's like trying to patch a sinking ship with duct tape.
Mm-hmm, that's a vivid picture. Now, isn't it interesting, and maybe a bit ironic, that someone like Richard Wolff, primarily known for his economic analyses, could bring such a noteworthy perspective into what many had assumed was purely a political drama?
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of a testament to the interdisciplinary nature of these issues: politics, law, economy, they're all deeply connected. And when you start to view it through a multifaceted lens, the whole picture of Trump's current standing starts to show cracks in a way that a single perspective would never reveal.
Right, exactly. And while we're on that note, there's also that broader public sentiment emerging. Even among his staunch supporters, there's a rising anger or disillusionment. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's pretty telling. When even the base begins to waver, you know something major is going on. The live broadcast and the real time exposure of all these controversial factors have led to a scenario where, despite years of a hardened persona, the cracks
Yep, I
are
see it.
impossible to ignore.
That makes me wonder about the ripple effects on the political landscape. With Trump's image taking a hit so publicly, is there a risk that it will trigger more skeptical scrutiny across the entire spectrum of political figures?
It's quite possible when a figure as polarizing and prominent as Trump shows signs of vulnerability, it could embolden critics and fuel broader movements demanding accountability and transparency. In other words, it might inspire a re evaluation of political narratives.
I agree. So, in a way, Wolf's point goes beyond just one person, right? It's almost a commentary on an entire system that's built on um, maintaining a certain image at the expense of substance.
Exactly. The analysis hints at a systemic issue where personal branding and political strategy have overshadowed substantial policy discourse. And when that balance shifts, when reality starts catching up, the fallout can be
Right,
immense.
very true. I really appreciate how Wolf didn't shy away from linking these separate elements, legal, economic, and political, to paint a holistic picture of why Trump's position is faltering.
Yeah, it's a very comprehensive approach. And while some might argue that emphasizing these aspects unfairly singles him out, the evidence he presents creates a compelling narrative.
Indeed. That brings up an interesting critique. Could this kind of analysis be seen as somewhat biased or one sided? After all, every public figure has multifaceted challenges.
You raise a good point there. It's fair to say that any analysis, especially in live broadcasts, can slip into a certain narrative spin. Wolf has his own lens, focusing on the interplay of economic policies and legal battles, but I think his approach is more of a wake up call rather than a definitive verdict on his character.
Exactly, exactly. What's striking is, even if one might debate his take, the fact that such discussion is getting amplified live in real time tells us a lot about the current media environment. Every statement and reaction is amplified, almost like taking a microscopic look at public sentiment.
Right? And this interconnectedness between live media and public perception means that these analyses, however raw they are, can heavily influence the public dialogue. It's kind of like watching a storm form.
Exactly. And speaking of storms, do you think this marks a turning point for Trump's future in political endeavors?
Well, it's hard to say for sure. There's always the flip side. A political comeback can be sparked precisely when the pressure reaches a boiling point. But given how these legal and economic issues have intertwined with his personal image, it certainly is a precarious situation.
That's an interesting perspective. It almost makes me wonder if, in a way, this could redefine political accountability, where public figures are forced to reckon with every misstep in real time.
Exactly, that's one of the broader implications. It's like the era of infinite accountability, where every policy error, every personal misjudgment is rigorously and publicly analyzed. In that sense, the live broadcast isn't just about one incident, it's a sign of the times.
Right, absolutely. Well, that certainly gives us a lot to think about. When you have live, unedited scrutiny of a figure like Trump, the consequences ripple far beyond the immediate reaction.
For sure. And while debates will continue about the fairness and bias in these analyses, it undeniably signals a shift in how political and economic accountability is enforced in the public eye.
Exactly. Thanks for walking through that with me. It's fascinating to see how one live broadcast can open up such a broad discussion about the interplay of politics, economics, and media.
Absolutely, the conversation is far from over, but for now, diving into these revelations has been a real eye opener.
Indeed, it has.